As income inequality in the US gets worse and worse and housing gets more and more expensive, you increasingly have to ask the question, can working class people even afford to live in cities anymore? Well, today I'm going to dig into this question basically the only way I know how, which is to give you a top 10 list of affordable cities, and we're going to look at the other end of the spectrum too. I'll tell you how I came up with the two lists, which have a really interesting variety of cities from all over, and then we'll count them down with some philosophical discussion along the way. Because there's a core question of values embedded in all of this, which is basically, do we want cities that are only livable if you're at or above the median household income? I mean, I guess there's a saying that the budget your country is operating under is a statement of its values, so maybe that answers the question. But it's just a mathematical truism that not everyone can be above the median. In fact, there's an exact percentage for whom it's logically impossible to be above the median. But that's not even what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about instead is the people that your city cannot function without, who aren't at the median or above. Service workers, childcare workers, gig economy people. And I'm a YouTuber now, but I have been a service worker in the past. I bartended in Seattle at a time when it was much more feasible to afford rent on that kind of income. And I find it really psychically distressing to go to a bar these days or a coffee shop in an expensive coastal city and wonder how the person who's making my beverages is making ends meet at all. So the thing I'm going to look at today is affordability for people who are at the 25th percentile of income. Methodology. The 2023 American Community Survey doesn't give you exactly this, but you can interpolate your way to estimating the 25th percentile household income. And as you're going to see, the variation in this number between different cities is pretty shocking. And then I wanted to find basically the 25th percentile rental unit in each city, which requires some data wrangling. I used this massive database of every rental unit that was on the market in the US in May of this year. Over 350,000 units in the data set. And this came from my friends at Dwellsy, so thanks to them, and do check out their site. They're on a mission to democratize data in the home rental space by eliminating pay-to-play listings. What I did was calculate rent per square foot for every unit on the market, and then find the 25th percentile for each city. The distribution of 25th percentile rent per square foot in US cities is also extremely wild, and we're going to end up talking about just about all of the outliers here. Really quick, I'm aware that there's some shortcomings here, like trying to match up the 25th percentile household with the 25th percentile rental unit on the market doesn't necessarily follow logically, since a lot of households own their home and aren't even competing for rental units. Right here, I could actually do like 10 minutes of caveats about the methodology, but that would make for an extremely dull video, and I'm pretty sure all of you are gonna put your critiques down in the comments anyway. So the way I'm gonna present this is percentage of annual income that the 25th percentile household has to spend to be able to afford the 25th percentile rental. And to make it apples to apples among cities, I'm gonna make it a 1,000 square foot unit. And just for reference, here are the numbers for the US as a whole. 25th percentile household income, around $39,000. 25th percentile rental unit on the market, $1.25 a square foot, so $12.50 a month for 1,000 square feet, or $15,000 a year. You know that guidance to limit spending on occupancy to 30% of your income? Generally not realistic these days, and definitely not at the 25th percentile, although I am going to share a few cities that I think are going to surprise you. Okay, already just way too much preamble, so let's get into it. 10th least affordable, Oakland, California. 25th percentile income, a little over $40,000, and 25th percentile housing is going to eat up over 75% of that. Quick word on threshold criteria. I only wanted to use cities that had like 500 active listings or more, just so I can get a good sample. And I only wanted to use central cities and not suburbs, because suburbs have some weird things going on that we'll discuss later in the video. I do consider Oakland a central city of the Bay Area region, but not Berkeley, which did also have 500 plus active listings and performs even worse. Actually, a lower 25th percentile income and more expensive 25th percentile housing, but I suspect this one could be skewed by the number of college students. Interesting data point though. Ninth worst, Baltimore. Interesting one since I mentally categorize it as above average on affordable urbanism, but this exercise we're doing today accounts for local economic conditions, and even though housing is relatively inexpensive, for an Acela corridor city, Baltimore still behaves more like a Rust Belt city economically. Eighth worst, also surprising, Chicago. Price per square foot at the 25th percentile, not that much lower than Oakland, but the household income quite a bit lower. You know, Chicago tops the first affordable urbanism list I ever made, but rents have been rising for a while now. Maybe I just shouldn't have said anything. Seventh toughest, Detroit. Some of the lowest rents you'll find in any major city in the US, but 25th percentile household income, just over $15,000. I loved visiting Detroit, and there is a sense of resurgence going on there, but the story is complicated, to say the least. And I think it's fair to say the benefits of that resurgence aren't being distributed evenly. 6. Honolulu, 25th percentile household income, over $42,000, best we've seen so far. But the housing at that level comes in at over $3 a square foot, so now it's costing you over 85% of your income to afford 1,000 square feet. 5. Miami. Shouldn't be a surprise because I think it came out the worst in the US when I analyzed the cost of housing and transportation relative to a city's minimum wage. It's just a bad combination of being an expensive city to live in, with a lot of service industry people who have to live there since you can't really sprawl into the Everglades. 4. Los Angeles. The 25th percentile household income of $36,500 barely covers the rent on 1,000 square feet. The state has taken steps recently to remove the barriers to building more housing, but California's been bleeding a lot of population to states we're going to talk about in the second half of this video. While we're here, let's hit number 3, San Francisco. 25th percentile income, over $50,000, but that'll barely cover the rent. I honestly don't know how any part of the Bay Area is livable on $50K. I did a whole video about the cities along the Caltrain corridor through Silicon Valley, and I do consider San Jose a central city, and housing is super expensive, but prevailing rents are significantly less than San Francisco, and 25th percentile household incomes are quite a bit higher, so it doesn't make this list. I don't know how much suspense there is with the top 2. Second is Boston. The 25th percentile rental unit is over $4 a square foot. It's tough to see how you can make that work. You know, I mentally put Boston and DC in a similar category as far as things like housing prices and urban amenities, but DC does not make this list. It's not cheap, but compared to Boston, the rental units are around a quarter less expensive, and the incomes are around 35% higher. Number 1, not a shocker, until you look at the actual numbers. New York City, one of the richest cities in the world, the 25th percentile household income is not that high, just a bit over $30,000. And the housing? 25th percentile is over $6 a square foot. And I know New Yorkers economize on space like nowhere else in the US, and they tend to have the best transit access and walkable amenities. It's no secret, people will make a lot of sacrifices to live here because there's nowhere like it, but the math just still doesn't really math. Okay, call that the problem statement if you like, and I'm not going to tell you the solution is to move somewhere else. That would be pretty flip. But when we look at the other end of the spectrum, I think it's going to be pretty eye-opening. First, usual reminder that I'm on various apps if you want to stay apprised of what I'm up to. And what I'm up to at time of release on YouTube is I'm in Edmonton, Alberta. Last I checked, still seats available for the event here Thursday evening. And I believe today's the day we're opening the Patreon pre-sale for tickets to my live event with Doug and Sarah from The War on Cars in Seattle at Town Hall. Maybe check my socials to confirm, but there's no way of telling how fast tickets are going to go, so you might want to jump on it if you're interested. Okay, here are the 10 cities where you can get the most apartment for your money at the 25th percentile. Las Vegas, the economy is solid, $38,000 household income at this percentile, rent just $1.24 a square foot. Suburbs don't qualify for this list, but Henderson would be top 5 if I included it, and this is really the reason I decided to live there in the first year of this channel. I was living in something like a 25th percentile Henderson apartment, and probably making less than 25th percentile, but honestly, pretty good quality of life in my opinion. 9. Jacksonville, Florida. So here's the thing. People at the 25th percentile income level need reduced car dependency probably more than the median person, but the rental properties they can afford are usually in places with below average transit access and walkability. I kind of wanted to do the thing where I show you the literal 25th percentile property and give you some funny commentary, but I actually think this is a dead serious issue that impacts all of us, and I just don't feel like being flip about it. Sorry. 8. San Antonio. Incomes at this level, not that high, but just over $1 a square foot monthly rent. This is a city that has drastically different walkability in different locations. I didn't spend a lot of time street viewing the 25th percentile apartments, but the locations I saw are pretty challenging. 7. Indianapolis. Similar numbers to San Antonio. The 25th percentile rental here was actually kind of intriguing, so I will share it. It's both of these rental houses, pretty close into downtown. I mean, I'd want to go walk through it, but it seems like a contender. 6. A surprising one, maybe. Austin, Texas, which for several years was experiencing a serious spike in rental prices, but in a shocking development, they increased the supply of an item and the price of that item started cooling down. 25th percentile household income, almost $50,000, and the corresponding rental is now under $1.50 a square foot. Geographically, it's a very large city, so the urban context is gonna vary a lot, but it's kind of a renter's market right now. Also geographically very large, number 5, Oklahoma City. At the 25th percentile, you could probably get 1,000 square feet for around 35% of your household income. And apparently you get an NBA champion. Just please bring back the Sonics. Number 4, the other threshold criterion I might not have mentioned is I'm only doing metro areas over $1 million, just because this is a channel about cities and that's sort of my mental cutoff. And Omaha, Nebraska is the last city that would make that cut. Actually, higher 25th percentile incomes and rental prices than OKC, but the math works out just a bit better. Could you live in Omaha car-free? Well, see if you can find something along the Orbit BRT line. Runs every 10 minutes, most days. Pretty good for a US city this size. 3. Fort Worth, Texas, which I consider a co-central city with Dallas. Dallas doesn't make this list, but Fort Worth, with a 25th percentile income of $42,000 and rents at $1.20 a square foot, about as good a situation as you're going to find in a large US city. And I actually want to talk about Frisco, north of Dallas. This is one of the sprawling suburbs the New York Times praised recently for how much housing they're building. And if I included suburbs with over 500 active listings on this list, Frisco would be number 1. Not because rents are that low. The 25th percentile is about $1.60 a square foot, but because the 25th percentile income is so high, $78,000. So now you can probably see why I didn't include the suburbs. Just too much self-selection and self-sorting within a metro area. 2. Charlotte, North Carolina, with 25th percentile incomes over $43,000 and rentals in that category going for $1.15 a square foot. You're now actually pretty close to spending 30% on housing. This is a little like Austin or San Antonio in that the city is geographically extremely large and the walkability and general availability of transit options is gonna vary a lot, but Charlotte in general gives you a lot for your money. A couple quick honorable mentions. Core cities that had over 500 active listings but are under 1 million metro area population. Colorado Springs, I'm absolutely floored that you can live anywhere in Colorado at 25th percentile household income, but this would rank higher than Charlotte, but below number 1. And then Clarksville, Tennessee, metro area population just a bit over 300K, but the city proper has almost 1,000 rental listings. I haven't talked about Clarksville at any point in the history of this channel, but now I'm just slightly curious. Let's go back to Charlotte and hop a Piedmont train all the way to the end of the line and get off at my number 1 city, Raleigh, North Carolina. 25th percentile household income over $45,000, 25th percentile rent under $1.20 a square foot. This is very subjective, but on both trips to North Carolina I've done since I started the channel, one of the most striking things was how chill and friendly the people were wherever I went, and I just wonder if the fact that the cities are livable for a wider swath of the population plays into that. Also, you can stop off at Durham while you're on the Piedmont. Doesn't hit the population threshold, but also had 500 active listings and would have made the top 5 here also. North Carolina, I guess this is your week. So one recurring theme on this channel is how hard it is to build housing in expensive coastal cities and how this contributes to the overall housing supply crisis. California tends to be ground zero for this sort of thing, and even if you don't live there, you might have seen recently that Governor Newsom and the state legislature approved changes to environmental regulations to help spur the construction of much needed new housing. It's a super interesting course change for the state, and it gets even more interesting when you use today's sponsor, Ground News, to compare how it's being covered. Ground News is a website and app designed to make reading the news easier and more data-driven. Every day, they collect thousands of articles from all over the world and arrange them by story, complete with visual breakdowns of the reporting bias, reliability, and ownership, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. They even give you summaries to help you understand how these biases might influence framing. This story out of California is a prime example. We can see over 100 different news sources reporting on it, with a bit more reporting coming from left of center. And the variety of framings is interesting because housing is an issue that doesn't sort that neatly into left and right ideologies. For example, left-leaning Daily Kos doesn't seem to be a fan. Newsom, corporate Dems, and MAGA Republicans unite to pass a bill gutting landmark environmental law, while the right-leaning Slay News has a very different take. California forced to roll back green agenda regulations blocking home construction, almost as if it's something that was imposed from the outside. Ground News really reveals a lot, not just about specific stories, but about the whole media ecosystem in a way that's super interesting. Another feature I love, the blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum, like this one. Major reports about how climate change affects the US are removed from websites, which you'll be absolutely shocked to learn is getting extremely low coverage from right-leaning news sites. So the blind spot feature means Ground News is good for understanding not just the different ways left and right-leaning sources cover stories, but whether they even cover them at all. Ground News is a great tool for sifting through misinformation and bias and finding news that really matters, and I can't recommend it strongly enough. In fact, they're currently offering 40% off their Vantage subscription, which is what I use for unlimited access to all their great features, including Blind Spot. You can only access this discount through my link, so go to ground.news/CityNerd, click the link down in the description, or use the QR code right here on screen, and support an independent news platform that's working to make the media landscape more transparent. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining today, and thanks as always to the patrons for your direct support, which allows me to not go back to my day job and instead just talk about the things that I think are important. Keep the great topic suggestions coming. I'll be back with a new episode in a couple weeks, and I'll see you then.